Legacy Precious Metals is the company that I trust to give you good and patient counsel for investing in your retirement. The Biden administration has caused a financial crisis, and they have no clue how to fix it. Oil prices have skyrocketed, and when oil prices go up, not only do your expenses go up, but the cost of transportation and shipping spikes, leading the prices of goods to rise. And we are already seeing record inflation. That's the last thing that we need. Our economy is in trouble, and you need to take steps to protect yourself. If all your money is tied up in stocks, bonds, and traditional markets, you may be vulnerable. So gold is one of the very best ways to protect your retirement. No matter what happens, you own your own gold. It's real, it's physical, and it's always been valuable since the dawn of time. Call Legacy Precious Metals today at 866-528-1903 or visit them online at legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com, where you can download the free investor's guide. You can also go to my Facebook page, Jenna Ellis. I am a public figure on Facebook, and I just posted yesterday a really great interview with the president of Legacy Precious Metals, who is discussing why you need to start your retirement account even if you're in your 20s or 30s. There is always a great time to protect your retirement and invest, just like you want to protect your health over the long term. So go to Legacy Precious Metals at legacypminvestments.com or call 866-528-1903. In November of 2020, the Democrats and their allies intentionally changed and ignored state law in the administration of the election. They were planning to pull off the greatest scheme, worse than Watergate. They didn't think we would catch them, but we did. Find out more details about what happened, how they did it, in the new documentary film called 2000 Mules, directed and narrated by renowned filmmaker and my friend Dinesh D'Souza, and executive produced by the Salem Media Group. This is also with research from truethevote.org. 2000 Mules tells the story of the ones who tried to hijack a presidential election. You'll see the actual video surveillance tapes. You'll see how their cell phones were tracked to box after box as they got paid to carry out this illegal scheme. Watch the movie and decide the truth for yourself. Attend a limited release premiere of 2000 Mules on May 2nd or May 4th. Check your local listings and get your tickets today at 2000mules.com. That's the number 2000mules.com.
As a constitutional law attorney, former senior legal advisor, and personal counsel to President Donald J. Trump, Jenna Ellis believes in the rule of law and the importance of integrity in our elections. And she's ready to tackle the big cultural and legal issues facing America. This is the Jenna Ellis Show. Here is your host, Jenna Ellis.
Hey friends, I'm Micah Bock, and welcome back to the Jenna Ellis Show. I'm guest hosting for Jenna Ellis today, and we've got a very, very special guest with us, and that's Morgan Zegers, who is the CEO and founder of Young Americans Against Socialism. Morgan, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for being here. I just want to take a moment to thank you for your contributions to the Young Conservative movement, everything you've done. You've built out a very successful organization that has changed the lives of thousands of young conservatives and turned them against the impact of socialism in their culture and in their lives today. And it's had a profound impact on my life as well. So I'm very excited to kind of break down some of the current news topics in the news cycle today and discuss with you the impact that young conservatives can have on the 2022 election that's upcoming and on the future trajectory of the United States. So to start with that, I mean, what a year it's been, for young conservatives, especially those who are working on campaigns or are becoming more politically involved. We've got the Roe versus Wade potential decision that's about to be handed down. We've seen pushback in our school systems from young people against mask mandates and vaccine mandates. And we really see kind of a reemergence of conservative views really picking up the mantle from an older generation. What do you think their largest impact has been? And where do you think that we can go from here as individuals who are, millennials or even younger, heading orienting ourselves in the political sense?
Oh my gosh. Well, that's a loaded question. Thank you again for having me on. I appreciate it. I would say that over the last few years, as we've experienced COVID, my analysis of all of this has been that young people are either going to be completely anti-authority by the end of this, and they are going to be so frustrated and upset, especially with the adults that made them submit to things. I mean, not only did they lose the experience of their proms and of their classroom experiences in terms of graduation and all of those milestones in life, but then it started to affect family businesses of young people, and their elder family members passed away, and they were locked down for not just a few months like was initially promised, but then they lost years and years of school, and they ended up paying college tuition just to sit in a personal room alone watching the class on a Zoom screen. And so I have a feeling a lot of these young people are going to grow up and be very anti-authority after looking at the science, looking at the data, and saying, I cannot believe the adults at the time made us go through these terrible decisions. On the other hand, though, I'm really worried that we're teaching young people, especially the younger generations, that this is just naturally the role of government in our lives. And so I feel like we could go either way. I am a bit worried that more and more young people see that this is an appropriate role for government to take in our lives, making these personal decisions. But either way, this has definitely been a tumultuous year. So I'm excited that so many people are stepping up. Unfortunately, it's just been because we've all been so personally affected by this.
Right, and that's kind of where your organization comes into play, right? I mean, you founded Young Americans Against Socialism to give young people a voice against what you presumably believe to be an overreaching government, right? So can you speak maybe to the role that your organization has played with, the mask mandates, maybe the pro-life issues that have risen over the last year or so, and how you've been able to empower young people to speak boldly in the public square?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I kind of have two focuses in life right now, Mike. I have my personal podcast, The Morgan Zegers Show, which I hope you guys would go subscribe to it if you're interested in hearing. But we look at the current events, the situations of culture, politics in our society from a historic lens, and then from more of a current events, evaluating the news lens. And I really enjoy it. But the other passion that I focus on is my nonprofit, Young Americans Against Socialism. And I started it because when I was in college, I had a communist roommate with a poster of Mao Zedong, Lenin, Stalin, Karl Marx, and Fidel Castro on the wall. And she was telling me that her ideas with these mass murderers and dictators on that poster were going to uplift the working class of America, end poverty in America, bring justice for all, the usual feel-good talking points. And in my head, I was trying to think of what have I learned about these terrible men on the posters? I mean, I feel like they're bad guys based on the small amount that I did learn, but how come I don't know what else to say when I'm meeting a self-identified communist? And I looked into it. I started researching so much, and I started looking especially at curriculum in schools, and I realized we are being so misled, lied to, and failed by the public education system. And then on top of that, by the professors in college once we graduate, and then by the mainstream media, and by pop culture, and all of these political influencers. And so I wanted to find a way to teach what's not being taught in the school system, and then what's further propagated by the radical left in other areas of our society. And I think that personally, the best way to do this is from firsthand testimony from survivors of these ideologies. And so we now have a show called The Freedom Records, which is on YouTube and Rumble, and the first episode comes out in June. So I hope everyone goes and subscribes to Young Americans Against Socialism on YouTube or Rumble. We have fightsocialism.org as our website, and every episode each week is going to be an interview, at least 1 hour, with a survivor from a communist country. We have at least 3 interviews already with communist Chinese survivors. It is absolutely awesome, and all of their lessons that they talk about have to do with what is now going on in America. That's the key thing. We aren't just hearing the story of the past. We are hearing their triumphant story of struggle and resilience and independence, seeking that freedom in America after immigrating here, but then also connecting the lessons of history to what we're facing here in America today and what needs to be done to make sure we don't repeat it. So, like I said, it's not in the public education system anymore. We're going to just do it ourselves, and we're trying to spread the word about these shows as much as possible.
That's wonderful, and that's awesome, and I urge everyone to go subscribe as well. Now, I think it's really interesting that you brought up the point of your roommate having a poster that kind of praised or enshrined some of these left-wing individuals. Do you think that America's youth today is more inclined towards that style of governance, or do you think we're seeing a shift back towards more conservative styles of leadership, more individual liberty, a focus on self-valuations and self-worth over maybe the collective that we saw from last generation?
Yeah, I mean, Micah, if you just take a quick look at the statistics and you see that, for example, in I think 2020, YouGov did a poll and it said 70% of people our age, millennials and Gen Z, would vote for a socialist. That alone is kind of scary, right? And so a lot of people look at that and they go, ugh, AOC and the rest of her crazy young people, they are supporting dangerous ideas. But I prefer to break it down and get more specific with it of, do really 70% of young people want to seize the means of production, which is the definition of socialism? Do they really want government-run economies? And when you look more into the specifics, in that same poll, those same young people were asked, do you trust the government? And guess how many said that they trust the government? Only 5 to 6% of the same group that 70% of them had said they want the government to control the economy. And so I see this more so in a very optimistic lens that there's a lot of work to be done, of course, but our generation is being lied to by very radical people that, yes, have read Marx, they've read the ideologies, they've done all of that work, and they want to try socialism and communism again. And they're using confused and uneducated, ignorant young people that have good intentions for America, and they're using them as useful idiots. So I think if we reach them first before they get further indoctrinated and further tricked and lied to by the left, there's a lot of opportunity for us to bring them to our side. Now, that being said, they might still identify as liberal, they might still support Democrats, whatever it may be, but we at least need to get them back under that foundation of understanding the importance of economic independence and classical liberalism, because right now the radical left supports things like authoritarianism, force, and totalitarianism, which is the silencing of other opinions, of any wrong thinkers, dissenters. So I have a feeling a lot of young people are more so into just giving power to the people, and we have to let them know that economic independence is really what does that.
I think that's really interesting because it's a concept that I've been discussing with some friends of mine as well that are politically involved. And, as young people, especially teenagers, the stereotypical teenagers is framed as someone who wants to rebel, against whatever authority figure or structure or paradigm is placed above them. And, for the longest time, that authority figure and that structure that existed in the United States was candidly a more conservative structure, where we had more conservative values promulgated on the national stage. And it's only really been over the last 30, maybe 40 or so years that we've really seen a power shift in the United States, and this liberal ideology has really come to center stage. And I always like to ask liberal friends that I may have when they talk about how they're fighting the power, like, what power are you actually fighting when you have every single large multinational corporation is espousing far left ideology and far left value systems, when the legislative branch is controlled by the left, when the executive branch is controlled by the left, when pretty much every major institution in the United States is united in espousing one particular set of beliefs, a belief system that trends towards, as you rightly point out, socialistic styles of governance. Like, what exactly are you finally fighting for if you believe in socialism for the United States? And more so when we get down to really the brass tacks of what young individuals, whether they be liberal or conservative, believe, it's that they are upset with the way things are. They're upset with how our government is working, the functions of our current economic system, and the power that has been vested in a group of elite individuals in Washington, in New York, and in Hollywood as well. And they want something to change, and they have just in a reactionary manner turned towards what they presumed to be the method of change. And so you're doing really important work here in showcasing that the correct method of change is not to empower the state, it's rather to empower the individual, to vest the ability to make choices within yourself, not within some overarching group of leaders or other individuals that dictate morality to you from high seats in marble palaces. So my question for you really is, as we kind of break through that paradigm, and as you point out, the evidence is kind of pointing to the fact that young people are more and more so open to the idea of fighting the power and recognizing what the true powers that be are, which are liberal indoctrination really across our country. Where do we go from here? What's the next step for young conservatives, and how can they educate themselves? How can they get themselves involved? And what should they be rooting themselves in as we head into 2022 and as we head into the next few years for our country?
Yeah, I mean, again, loaded question, Micah. Oh my goodness. I would say that is definitely funny that you bring that up, first of all, before I answer your question, because I get a lot of attacks from leftists, right? I mean, they call me a Nazi, a white supremacist, the usual attacks that you throw at conservatives, especially conservative women. We get called internally misogynistic, and problematic is my favorite word. So I'm very problematic because of my conservative female views. But one of the things that they always call me is a bootlicker, right? That's the infamous accusation that capitalists are licking the boot of the evil rich people. But I can't imagine a greater example of bootlicking than doing something like supporting the government mandating a vaccine that was created by a private company, and then the private company gets automatically paid for these created products by government via taxpayer dollars. And so when you start to break it down and explain the actual issues that are going on with policies, it really shocks a lot of young people. And one of those issues is the student loan situation. Most young people have no idea what's going on with the government involvement in the student loan crisis. And so once they find that kind of stuff out, it's kind of like their mind explodes and they go, oh, and so explaining things like cronyism versus capitalism versus economic independence, that is just stuff that's eye-opening. And again, it's not like they were presented this information from an early age and then they chose to just be socialist after being presented all the issues. Instead, they were not given this proper information from the start. And so I don't really blame them for falling for it. I remember many times when I was put through the indoctrination. And whether it was normalizing the creation of the Department of Education at a federal level, or whether it was telling us about, oh, well, now we need to call it climate change, not global warming, or all of these random justifications. Another one of those is just the empowerment of women via hookup culture and immoral behavior, and then embracing things like abortion to get rid of those consequences from our own actions. And so as a young woman especially, I can personally attest to the fact that me and many of my friends are waking up to the fact that we aren't happy with how much society overcorrected from perhaps the frustrating situations that were there when conservative politics were influencing political culture a little too much, like in the mid-1900s. I mean, if you read The Feminine Mystique, we have overcorrected from that situation so much that now women are saying, wait, why am I serving my corporate boss at a 9-to-5 job instead of being there for my family? Where did we go wrong, and why was I told that this would be more empowering instead of perhaps just finding a healthier balance than being told to go right to the kitchen all the time? So I think a lot of us are starting to question what we've been told should be good and empowering for us, and that's very promising for our side moving forward, and I'm really hopeful for our movement.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting that you bring up the idea that of overcorrection in general. I was reading a really interesting article in Newsweek about a week ago about a very far left LGBTQ activist who had been there since the beginning, had been really involved in promoting his ideology on the national stage. And what he was saying is that the most oppressed he's ever felt has been under this new era of LGBTQ activism. That the people that he presumably fought for many years have turned against him because he's no longer liberal enough for them. And this is someone that was on the far left of the far left just 10, 15 years ago. So what you accurately point out and what we're looking at here is an overcorrection that has resulted in taking a lot of people that were in the middle and leaving them stranded on an island where they don't feel like they belong really in either political movement in our country. And I think that many, many more of them are ascribing to this idea, both young people and old people, that they are the ones that can decide for themselves what's best for themselves. And that's a time-honored principle that has worked for Americans for generations. It's why we became the greatest country in the world, was through individual innovation. And why we continue to thrive is because of individual innovators who come to our country. And they're realizing more and more that this collectivism, this idea that somehow the government's going to solve all of our ills is not the rebellion that they thought it was. They're not fighting the power when they're masking up and getting jabbed at the request of the National Institute of Health. They are simply another cog in the wheel, unfortunately. And I think that the far left movement as a whole really is going to come into a crisis of conscience, as it were, in trying to understand its purpose and what the future for it is. Because, as I said earlier, they have everything. They've essentially won the culture war across the board, and it's only now that the right has become the radicals for freedom and individuals that are willing to re-engage in those battles in a way that we weren't willing to do, generations ago. And I think, honestly, and I want your input on this, I think it really started with our school systems. I think it started once we lost our higher education systems and then our public education systems to far left ideology, is once we started to see this cultural shift in the United States. Because, as you said, you weren't presented with these ideas all the time growing up. Many Americans aren't presented with these ideas all the time growing up. It's really only once you go out and look. And that's because our system is not designed to teach you about every aspect of American culture or the truth from untruths or give you all of the facts. It's designed to teach you a version of the facts, and that version is in line with a political ideology.
Yeah. And Micah, I've got to say, I feel almost disenfranchised because, and I worry that other young people do too. And that's why, as we're coming of age, as we're becoming adults, as we're looking at the stereotypical normal that the radical left and the neoliberals have created for us, we're starting to say, how is this the proper solution for society? And I could see it. I mean, I follow a lot of like homeschool, homestead, motherhood kind of pages, pregnancy pages. And I can't tell you how much of a trend it is to see the complaints and the struggles that women face, where we're expected to do everything at home and be that boss babe 9-to-5 grinder at a corporate job as we work our way up the corporate ladder. And they're saying it's physically not possible. Who thought this would be a good idea? And they aren't asking that as in realizing that staying at home or focusing on the home would be more important. I just find it so ironic, though, that the answer is that it's not supposed to be this way. It's not supposed to be happening. No wonder our society is crumbling, because the family unit is the most important thing possible, not our personal careers. And if you look at all the problems in society, you have so much depression amongst young people. You have so much depression, especially amongst 20-year-old, 20-something young women and young men. And there's this phase in life from 20s to 30s that we're told to live it up and to enjoy and focus on us and then settle down in the future, that it's this lost period of 10 years where we're partying it up like we're children still with no responsibility. And then when we're 30, we are stuck because we didn't focus on what we should have focused on in those important years from 20 to 30. And so I would say we need to have more responsibility, more service to others, more selflessness added into our lives, and that will give us greater purpose, that will give us greater grounding into the world around us. When we serve others, we are happiest, and for some reason, when we look past all the political jargon and stuff, pop culture and even politicians are telling us to focus on ourselves only. And I'm sorry, but it just seems wrong to be doing so, and it doesn't benefit us at all. It creates very unhappy people. So added on to that, it's a classic move by the communists and the leftists throughout history when they rise to power to create chaos in society. And so that's another one of the reasons why I like to do these interviews, Micah, because I don't just want to hear about the economic steps. That's the socialism aspect. But when we talk about the left rising to power, there's the authoritarianism, which is embracing force, not choice, to implement a way of life, to implement policy. And it's very, very dangerous because the left in America is embracing that. But there's also the totalitarianism, which any dissenters, any wrong thinkers, they are shouted down, removed from the public square, removed from positions of power, and eliminated, whether that's in a more peaceful way or a more violent way. And we're starting to see the left in America embrace these things as well as economic socialism. But when we interview the communism survivors, they talk about how the left tries to create chaos, not just in the economy with now government-controlled economic system, but now with gender roles, our primal roles levels as a society. And so that's why especially these stories of these pro-abortion people advocating for killing children up into the moment that the mother is dilating, the baby's about to be born. Or you're seeing in Target now they're selling chest binding equipment for young girls to be able to cover up their breasts. Or any other crazy radical leftist story. They are adding and creating chaos into our society at the most primal levels by disrupting things like gender expectations.
Well, how then does an individual young person who is interested in these issues and wants to learn more about what is true and what is false and how to orient themselves in the world that we live in, where would you send them to learn more information? What are the resources that currently exist? Because, I mean, frankly, we're not really getting it from our higher education systems. We're not getting it from our public school systems. And it seems more and more that every aspect of our culture has been inundated with an ideology that is completely in line with the baseline narrative of the left. So the question that I have for you is, where do young people go? What resources exist out there, and what can they do to equip themselves for what truly is becoming a battle for their minds?
Micah, you are asking some big questions. This could be multifaceted. So a lot of people, I will say this, I am very much a future homemaker, future homesteader, future mother, and I'm so excited about that. And I plan on homeschooling my kids. And I want to focus on creating an environment for them to thrive in as children, to become the best humans possible. I don't want them to conform to society by forcing them through the public school system, because it's just unacceptable as an option at this point. And so a lot of people say, oh, well, if you don't send your kids to public school, they won't grow up to fit in with society. Yeah, that's the point. I want to change society in my own personal way, and that means creating good humans that are grounded in a foundation of wholesomeness and goodness and service to others, and understand what it means to actually keep a healthy lifestyle, whether that's mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally, all of those things. And society is decrepit in many ways, so no, I don't want my kids to fit in that department. I would say, if we're talking about reading and learning the basics, I highly recommend first-hand testimony and initial sources. So don't listen to political commentators give you their opinions on situations that happened, but instead start to watch the original versions. One example is when I'm cooking at night, if something big is happening, like perhaps the State of the Union with Joe Biden, I posted a picture of me making muffins in the kitchen with the State of the Union on the screen in my little laptop, because I don't have a television, but I had it on my little laptop screen because I wanted to watch the initial actual speech and hear the president lie to us, ignore major problems, and say his fluffy talking points, because then I could personally understand how bad the situation really was, not what some political commentator inflamed it to be with their rhetoric the next day. But people commented and said, ugh, I can't possibly spend an hour listening to Joe Biden talk like that. I don't know how you did that, Morgan. Well, Micah, I would say that them flexing like that, like they're too good, like they're too annoyed to be able to listen to Joe Biden, that's not the flex they think it is. Instead, it's important for us to pay attention, be aware of what these people are saying, aka lying to us about, and then move forward and be able to talk about it on our own. The next thing they can do, on top of just watching and being aware of issues on a very basic level, is to read the classics. I love Road to Serfdom. I love the law. I love all of the founding documents, the Federalist Papers, and things like Democracy in America. I have a reading list. It's at morganzegers.com, because people always ask what books I'm reading, and so that includes historic books, politics books, homesteading books, all that stuff. But the more we read, the more we become educated on our own without somebody telling us what to think, the better that's going to be, and will be more effective in communication when we're talking to our peers. Because, Micah, there is a study from Michigan State University that said the most effective way to change a young person, or really anybody of any age, anybody's mind and their heart, is to actually hear it via peer, not via parent or professor or someone talking down to them. And so the more we are able to communicate freely about these things and be grounded in what we're saying instead of spewing talking points, the more effective we can be when we're trying to spread the good word. The last thing is for us to get back to our basics, our primal instincts, back into being connected to nature, connected to the world around us, and getting back to those traditional skills that our ancestors always had, eating the food that our ancestors always ate. Not the crap that's processed and approved by the FDA, not the chemicals that are approved by the FDA and that shouldn't be. All of that stuff that society's pushing onto us, we need to reject it and embrace tradition, embrace our culture, and embrace getting back to the basics. Most people don't know most life-keeping skills, homemaking skills, home economics, and I think everybody will benefit if we do that.
That makes sense. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting you brought up Democracy in America by Tocqueville. That's one of my favorite books. And one of the points that he makes in it, as he was traveling across the United States, a number of years after our founding, is that the American people were inherently political. To your point, they cared so much about the workings of their government that they were listening to every speech. They were engaging at every opportunity, and they were reading everything they could to orient themselves from a primary source perspective. And so if we as young people, especially in our TikTok society where everything is 5 or 6 seconds and then you've lost my interest, if we're not willing to spend the time to listen to what our leaders have to say and to listen to the decisions that they're making, we can never hope to fight the battles that we need to fight in order to reverse those decisions and to orient ourselves in light of the speeches that they're making. So I think you make a really, really important point that we need to spend the time necessary to train up ourselves, as the Bible says, in the way that we should go, so that when we're in battle and when we are in the fray attempting to lead the nation and shape the culture, we will not depart from what was true and what we knew to be true due to the research that we did. So Morgan, I just want to thank you so much for your time and for the opportunity for you to come on and share what you care about and what we should care about as young conservatives in the political space. I want to give you a moment to tell us what you're working on, what's coming next for you, and anything that you think people should keep in mind as they head out and engage with the world around them.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mike, for having me on. I appreciate it, and I love Jenna and all of her show. I usually listen to it when I'm hiking. I live in Arizona right now, so it's definitely a great thing to do when I'm working out. I would say I have my own podcast called The Morgan Zegers Show, and so you can go to morganzegers.com to subscribe to that on Apple or Spotify. And then my nonprofit, Young Americans Against Socialism, is coming out very soon with our first long-form series of firsthand testimonies from survivors from communist countries. And Micah, I've never been so proud of something. We film it in Dallas. I don't know if you've heard of American Journey Experience or Mercury One, which is the Glenn Beck charity. He works with some other people there as well, but they have a vault of artifacts, and they are allowing us to film in the vault next to the artifacts. So on the set where we are interviewing survivors of communism, there are official first copies of the Little Red Book from Mao's Communist Revolution, the Cultural Revolution in China. There is the Lincoln Family Bible. There is a ring with George Washington's hair on it, and there are guns from the Revolutionary War. There's a document that disproves the 1619 Project. There's a flag ripped up that was on site on D-Day, and it is the honor of a lifetime to get to interview amazing people in that set. So we're just really appreciative. That is on fightsocialism.org is our website, but Young Americans Against Socialism on YouTube and Rumble. And then I should also give a little shout out. I make wooden American flags. That's at zegersfreedomflags.shop. And you can use code FREEDOM for free shipping on those wooden flags. We would really appreciate it. It's my family business.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Morgan. A pleasure having you on. I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you, Micah.
Legacy Precious Metals is the company that I trust to give you good and patient counsel for investing in your retirement. The Biden administration has caused a financial crisis, and they have no clue how to fix it. Oil prices have skyrocketed, and when oil prices go up, not only do your expenses go up, but the cost of transportation and shipping spikes, leading the prices of goods to rise. And when and we are already seeing record inflation. That's the last thing that we need. Our economy is in trouble, and you need to take steps to protect yourself. If all your money is tied up in stocks, bonds, and traditional markets, you may be vulnerable. So gold is one of the very best ways to protect your retirement. No matter what happens, you own your own gold. It's real, it's physical, and it's always been valuable since the dawn of time. Call Legacy Precious Metals today at 866-528-1903 or visit them online at legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com, where you can download the free investor's guide. You can also go to my Facebook page, Jenna Ellis. I am a public figure on Facebook, and I just posted yesterday a really great interview with the president of Legacy Precious Metals, who is discussing why you need to start your retirement account even if you're in your 20s or 30s. There is always a great time to protect your retirement and invest, just like you want to protect your health over the long term. So go to Legacy Precious Metals at legacypminvestments.com or call 866-528-1903. I also want to talk about another great American who is the sponsor of this podcast, and that, of course, is my good friend Mike Lindell. He has been canceled out of so many box stores for simply standing up for his own political opinion. And disagree or not, or support him or not, it is a fundamental right of every American to be able to voice their opinion, and that absolutely includes politics. That absolutely includes issues that are central to our culture. That includes faith. Mike is such a very sincere Christian, and I am proud to consider him a friend, and he is, of course, a friend of this show. So right now, there is a special on MyPillow.com. Click on the new radio listener specials. Get deep discounts on all MyPillow products, including a great towel set, which is a 6-piece set. It includes 2 bath, 2 hand towels, 2 washcloths, made in the USA, regularly $109.99, now just $39.99, but you have to use the promo code Jenna. That's Jenna. That tells Mike that you listen to this show, you're happy that he is a sponsor of this show, and you will get great discounts, but use the promo code Jenna. That's Jenna, either at mypillow.com or call 1-800-564-8475 and use the promo code Jenna.